Hey, welcome to Bollox Talks and Tangents. It's Thursday at 6:34. Lenny's over there still writing. We got a great show. We got Blake Levins in the studio. We're super happy to be here. So much stuff to talk about. We have amazing sponsors. Appreciate you guys out there. If you would, if you're watching right now, share that show. Let's bring some people into this. Take care of our sponsors and do what we can do. But I can tell you right now, this show today, Lenny, we had so much content and so much to choose from. I'm going to pull this to you a little bit, Len.
I always do when I sit back, sir.
Yeah, Thank you. So much to choose from on tonight's topics. I had a tough time.
Yeah,
I had a tough time. Like, we could have just stayed with one topic and we could have talked about that the entire show. But first thing we got to do, we got to talk about our whiskey of the week. Our whiskey of the week, sir, is the port finish bourbon from St. Augustine Distillery. Have you tried this one yet?
I have.
Oh,
I have.
You can tell I've tried it quite a bit. So get my one sip in. Now it's time to talk about our sponsors. We already started talking about St. Augustine Distillery and their amazing bourbon. They have other liquors over there. They have the best tasting tour in the entire country. And the gift shop over there, even their apparel's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a cooler from there. I mean, everything, their logo, they did such a nice job on their branding.
Yeah.
The other group, along with their sister company,
right,
or brother company, I don't know.
We're doing women today. It could be a sister company.
Could be a sister company. City Gates Distillery. Fun spirits over there. You said you did a little tour.
I did. Julie and I stopped in there today. We had lunch in town. We'll get to that with our next sponsor, I fear.
Yeah.
And I took a walk around. It's an impressive place. A lot of staff there. They're very, very accommodating. And interesting products.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to going back and spending some time.
Fun products. If you are an adventurous drinker, you need to stop in, and it's going to make you go, wow, I never thought of that combination.
Free tastings.
Yeah, free tastings. All right, where'd you have lunch today?
I had lunch at Meehan's. Can you believe it?
Meehan's Irish Pub.
Oh, what Mary. It's a beautiful lunch.
What did you have?
I had the Reuben.
Oh,
I went with their strength. I had the Reuben. I also had a soup of the day, which was beef, mushroom, potato, and it was delicious. I had a cup of that first. It was really quite lovely.
Beef,
mushroom and potato. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I can get behind that.
It was groovy. It was hearty, and it was an overcast day.
And we're gonna stay on Sponsor Row. So also on Sponsor Row, the St. Augustine Pirate Museum.
Always.
My family was in town. They went last week. Absolutely loved it. My uncle, who's 91 years old.
I thought you were going to say your uncle was a pirate.
Yeah, well, he could have been. He was 91. So 91 years old. He loved it. His daughters were with him, and my cousins, and they just had a blast. They had a blast. So get over there, check out the Pirate Museum. They're always a part of the community here in St. Augustine, willing to help out. Over 800 artifacts, some amazing stuff. All right, still sticking with Sponsor Row, River and Fort Restaurant. Great bourbon selection. You know how we love our bourbons. Great bourbon selection, wonderful food, and the view can't be beat.
And there were some intrepid souls up there as the sky started to cloud over a little bit. There were intrepid souls up on that top deck between the metal umbrellas and the metal torches. Their gas torches there.
Tikis.
I was impressive, because it could have been rattling at any point in time.
Yeah, they're probably not from Florida.
Or they might be.
Yeah, no.
Or they might be.
No, that's one thing Florida people are afraid of.
Lightning. Yeah, well, I can understand why.
So, yeah, Florida, I mean, we're not afraid of the rain. We get angry when someone turns on their flashers to drive in the rain.
Right, which is illegal, oddly enough.
It is illegal.
I don't understand that, but it is.
Just get off the road.
Yeah.
All right, if you're not used to driving, just get off the road. Right. Go to Waffle House or something, because they're always open.
I like that.
All right, okay, Coquina Coast Realty.
New sponsor.
Well, these guys really know what they're doing.
I heard that.
And if you want to sell your house, you want to get how much value on your house,
an appraisal,
anything like that, give them a call. The person you need to call, his name's Troy.
Okay.
And his number's 904-669-7901. All right. And we'll talk you through all your real estate needs, commercial or residential.
Hey, The man knows his business, so I wouldn't go elsewhere.
Yeah. I mean, he knows his stuff.
He's a trained professional.
He's pretty good at history too. All right, Abare, Kresge and Associates. These guys are good at the numbers. They're the best. They're my CPA. They've been with me for almost 20 years now.
Wow.
And anybody who can keep me out of trouble for 20 years.
I was thinking about who can put up with you for 20 years, but okay.
That proves how good they are at their job. So give them a call, Abare, Kresge and Associates.
You had no choice.
Cheshire Customs and Collisions helped me out this week. I had a friend who had a flat tire, gave him a call. Cheshire Towing came over there, took care of my friend immediately. They're just always a part of the community. Really appreciate it. That's what I love about all our sponsors. They're not just great businesses. They're also community leaders. And they participate when somebody needs help. They're there.
Well, that's St. Augustine. It's a very entwined community in a positive way.
Yeah.
You know, it's philanthropic. It's supportive. It's a good community that way. It really is.
It really is. It really is. All right. Word origins is how we start. I have two. You have two.
I have two.
I'm gonna let you go first.
Okay. I might just do them back to back because they are related.
Oh, okay. I tell you what. Let me go first.
Go ahead.
Let me break the ice.
Gee, I wonder what we're going to be looking up today.
Breaking the ice.
Oh, okay.
So I thought it was more about a conversational, and I didn't understand what it was, and I thought it was about making drinks. In my mind, it was about making drinks, like, you know, with the ice pick and breaking the ice, and you have a conversation. Nope, completely wrong. You know what it is about.
I'll let you go.
Okay. In old Mariner days and stuff like that, when they were doing the Northern Straits and stuff like that.
Oh, Northwest Passage.
The Northwest Passage, they would have to have someone get ahead of them and break the ice. So that person started the journey as breaking the ice, which started the conversation, which started everything, started with breaking the ice. And
now, thanks to quite possibly global warming, you don't need too many icebreakers up there in the Northwest Passage any longer. It's all watered out. Correct.
Ice maker.
Yeah.
So did you know that was a Mariner term?
Well, I presume from the concept of icebreakers as major ships that are breaking up that stuff to get people to commerce through, but I didn't know in relation to how starting the conversation.
I had it so in my head as a start of the conversation, and that I was trying to take it to conversation of how it got to there. So that's Blake's got breaking ice happening down there. So, but that's where it comes from, breaking the ice.
All right.
All right, what you got? You got two back-to-back.
I do. I have sinister and dexterous. Both come from...
ambidextrous.
Nope. That's an extension of dexterous.
Okay.
But they're both from the Latin terms for left and right, or the Latin words for left and right.
Okay.
Sinister is from sinistra, and that's everything that's on the left side, which was perceived to be evil or...
wrong side of the bed.
Correct. The wrong side of the shield in heraldry, as a matter of fact. So anything that's that, it's evil, it portends disaster, things of that nature, is the sinister one, which is the left side. Dexter is, along with being apparently a serial killer and crime scene cleaner-upper, is dexterous, comes from dexter, which is the right hand, or right in Latin, which is correct, which is able. It's dexterous. It's the ability to do things with alacrity and incompetency.
Wait. Alacrity?
You're in a hurry.
Blake, did you hear that word?
Yeah, I'm panicking. It's in a hurry. I was in alacrity.
Alacrity.
Yeah.
The word was said way too fast and way too complicated by a New Yorker.
Yeah, but,
well, there you go. Alacrity. It's quickly.
How long have you been in Florida?
8 years.
Oh, he hasn't made 10 years yet. In 10 years, those words got to leave you.
I don't know if they ever will.
Those are
Get those words out, Ivy Leaguer.
Sorry. Well, you know, what can I tell you?
Ever heard the word alacrity?
Really?
No.
Oh, boy. I've done a public service here in Florida.
Alacrity.
Keep telling you, I try to raise the bar, not lower it, but it doesn't work.
No, you're making me take my hat off here.
Your head hurts now?
Gosh,
all right.
You're making my dad's bald head sweaty.
All right. So Dexter is right.
Right.
Sinister, I did know
Is
that was
left.
left.
Yep.
We did do the wrong side of the bed.
Okay.
And that's where that one kind of came from.
Yep.
But I didn't know.
And what I was going to look up and I didn't, and I possibly will for next week. Ambidextrous is you can use both hands equally as well, equally as competently.
Yeah.
I was going to look up to see how many presidents were left-handed, because there's obviously a lower percentage of the population is left-handed than right-handed, but there's been a predominance, especially in our more recent presidents, of them being left-handed. So I will endeavor to do that for next week.
Left-handed.
Yep.
George W. Bush was left-handed.
I'm not quite sure that Bill Clinton wasn't.
There was 8.
8?
Only 8 left-handed presidents?
I know William Taft was left-handed. He was the first president to throw out the first pitch. He started that tradition, and he was a lefty.
Nice.
Yeah. So some of them include Garfield, Hoover, Truman, Taft, Ford, Reagan, H.W. Bush, and Bill Clinton.
H.W. Bush.
And Obama.
And Obama.
Right, okay. Yeah, I thought Clinton was too. Yeah. So
8 out of 46.
But I wonder if they paid attention to the ones previous to that. But
I'm sure they did.
Maybe.
Oh, wait, hold on. Then I just realized Taft's not one of them, so this might have been like a backwards footage.
You said Taft.
Oh.
No, actually turns out it actually didn't say Taft on here.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
It might have been backwards footage because I definitely remember him throwing, and they could have reversed the film.
Well, it's like when you see
that
people.
Happened a lot in those days.
It happens nowadays when you see people that are doing selfies and all the words on their shirts are backwards.
So, good point. Good point. All right.
What do you got?
Here's one. The whole shebang.
Oh, all of it.
The whole shebang. We're doing running the whole shebang.
Okay.
All right. It's actually a Civil War term that came to be.
Interesting.
And the best origin that they could come up with is it's an Irish term for like a tavern, a shebang. And then they shifted it to a shebang. So when officers were writing home, they kind of shifted the word around and said you're running the whole shebang, but it's like basically you're running running to the tavern or running through the tavern, going to the bar is how it started. But like now it's like, the whole shebang.
It's everything.
Taking everything in.
It's all of it together.
Yeah.
Okay.
It has an Irish shebeen, like Sheben is where it came from, is the best origin they can, but it became pretty normal during the Civil War.
Okay.
All right. All right. We got court cases and we got famous American
women.
Which way you want to go first?
I'm good either way. You want to do women folk? You have.
All right. I have 4.
All right. I've got 3. I've got 3 women and I've got 2 court cases.
All right. Let's do the women.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to start off with somebody a lot of you guys probably don't know, Dr. Grace Hopper.
I'm looking forward to this. I have no idea who she is.
You ever heard of Dr. Grace Hopper?
I have not.
Blake, have you ever heard of Dr. Grace Hopper?
I have not.
All right. Do you have a picture of her?
I presume this is her.
All right. So this is Dr. Grace Hopper. I'm going to grab so I can make sure I get a lot of the stuff right. So Dr. Grace, and she got to the level of Rear Admiral. All right.
Okay.
She was born in she was born in 1906, I believe. I can't find it right there. 1906. She was born in 1906, died in 1992. All right. She wanted to go into she's a mathematician, like one of the most brilliant women mathematicians in the world. World War II broke out. She tried to get in the Navy. She only weighed 105 pounds. They had a minimum of 120.
Soaking wet? 105 pounds soaking wet for the Navy?
105 pounds. And she basically just absolutely just a brilliant woman. And she's the grandmother of computers.
Okay.
So she's the grandma of computers. Without her, she created a lot of the language that computers, COBOL.
Mm-hmm.
She's the creator of COBOL. She was awarded so many different things in the Navy. She was a Harvard grad. She was Vassar. She was the first person put on staff at Yale for physics. A woman put on staff for physics, mathematics, and physics. She basically was the first true woman to excel in a lot of the sciences and technological stuff.
STEM.
So she created women's STEM for all these other ladies that were always pushed to the side, like the ladies that worked on the NASA and stuff like that.
Mrs. Johnson.
She was the kind of the person that was their go-to person.
Really?
So Dr. Grace Hopper, and one of the things she did win, and this is the greatest award you can win, is the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Right.
So she was awarded that after her death, but it was given to her by President Barack Obama, and no one knows her name, and we should. So Dr. Grace Hopper. So never heard of her, right?
Not until now.
Okay, all
That's
right.
why I love this show. I learn
You're a
things.
computer geek. You ever heard of her? There you go.
Between the rabbit holes when I go home on my own or while I'm doing my research and what I learned from you that I didn't know, all good.
Yep. So who you got?
Well, I was going to do it in order, but if you're going Presidential Medal of Freedom, I'll go Presidential Medal of Freedom.
MCU one.
There you go. Wilma Mankiller.
Okay.
Great name, first of all.
Yeah.
Wilma Mankiller was a Cherokee. She was the first female principal chief of the Cherokee Nation and held that distinction for 10 years. She was an activist. She became very involved in Native American, I want to say almost suffrage, but when there was a Native American or an Indian takeover of Alcatraz Island, this sort of was her wake-up call. She ended up running on a ticket with somebody to be the vice chair of the Cherokee Nation, and she won that. And then she succeeded the man who was the principal chief, and then she held that position for 10 years. She was elected in 1985 and carried it through to 1995. And under that time, the Cherokee Nation sort of, I guess, built itself back up from 68,000 members to 170,000 members. And by the time she left office, she was running a budget of $150 million. And she was very progressive in all the positive ways. Education, health, housing, all things, employment, all things for the Cherokee people. And she ran the largest Native American or Indian confederacy in the country at the time. And in 1988, Bill Clinton awarded her the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Excellent.
Yep. And you'll be seeing her in your pockets, ladies and gentlemen, because in 2022, she became one of the first women coined on the women's collection of 25-cent pieces, American quarters, which are now all designated. They ran through all the states. They ran through national parks. Now they're doing women. Okay. And Wilma Mankiller is now on a quarter. So every now and again.
Did they select?
I'm thinking they're doing about 4 years worth of 4 a year, 5 a year. So they've only released 8 of them so far. I know that Eleanor Roosevelt comes out later this year. There's some very interesting women on there.
Can you pull up that list? That would be a great list to see with the topic we're talking about.
Yeah, it's interesting people. And there was some names on there of women I had no idea who they were. So it really is pretty fascinating. And yeah, as opposed to Sacagawea, who is on a $1 coin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So well, my next person is also on the quarter.
Okay.
But she's on the quarter for the state she's from.
Okay. Helen
Keller.
There you go.
So, Helen Keller. So, and Helen Keller to me is one of the, you know how like you look at something and go, okay, I was alive at the same time as this?
Yeah.
All right. I think of Helen Keller so far back, I didn't realize she passed away in 1968.
Yeah.
I was born in 67. So
Long
in
life.
my world of Quantum Leap, I could have met Helen Keller.
It is fascinating. And what this woman accomplished with the burdens she had, phenomenal. I mean, it's really miraculous. I mean, as much for what Annie Sullivan was able to communicate to her, as much as this woman learned and then shared as she went on. I mean, the people she met in her life, I mean, she was a mover and a shaker. And she, I mean, with Edison and presidents and everybody.
Her and her partner, her teacher,
right,
but became her best friend, and they stayed together up until Annie Sullivan actually passed. Annie Sullivan was only like 12 years older or 13 years older than Helen Keller, maybe a little bit more, but it was not a huge gap.
Right.
But they stayed friends, and Sullivan and her were together pretty much their entire life. Yeah. So, but Helen Keller, the quote that I always talk about, that I kind of stress to people, and I want to do this in my life, and I always fall short. But the quote she said is, I am one, but I am only one, but I am one. Okay? And what that means is I can't do everything, but what I can do, I will do.
Okay.
So, I am only one, but I am one.
But she didn't know a lot.
I don't know anybody who's lived a life to that level, to that quote, more than anybody else. I mean, she graduated from Ratliff. She wrote like 6 books. She lost her hearing and her eyesight at 19 months. Just absolutely incredible. And she's in the Alabama Women's Hall of Fame, and that's the coin she's on. And she's on their commemorative coin when they did the state
coins. And what's amazing is how, just try to put yourself in a position where you're trying to communicate with a person who has no sight and no hearing, and how Annie Sullivan was able to just break through is just phenomenal. First word she learned?
The simplicity of it, all it was doing just finger spelling. Right on the hand.
But how do you let Helen Keller know that I am spelling concepts and or words to you?
The first word.
Water.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
So.
But, mind-boggling. It's just, those are the things that really fascinate me about the human intellect, the way the brain works. It really is. It's stunning.
Yeah, and she wrote a total of 14 books. She gave speeches, even though she couldn't hear her own voice. She gave speeches, and she did essays on topics from animals to Mahatma Gandhi.
Interesting. Now I'm going to have to go see if I can find some tape of her speaking, because I don't know that I've ever listened to anything where I've heard her voice. Because she was blind and deaf. She wasn't mute, obviously.
It's not clear.
Well, I would think it could be halting.
The fact that I think I've only heard it a handful of times.
All right, it's something I'm going to look into.
No, there's some tapes out there for sure.
I do homework before the show, and then I go home and I have homework after the show.
So, but to me, she's my go-to woman, because anybody who had a reason to roll over and just accept life, because she was with a wealthy family. Yeah. And fortunately, she didn't have to do everything that she did in the world, and she just an amazing woman. So, worked on women's suffrage. Just amazing woman.
And
amazing human being.
I'm trying to not use the word trapped, but being isolated, I suppose, in your own mind without the outside stimulus of sight and sound is just hard to imagine.
Yeah. I can't even imagine where she was at with some of those things. And the word fearless gets used a lot, but in her world, you had to be. Yeah. So you just had to be. So who you got?
All right. Well, let's go with Jeanette Rankin. Jeanette Rankin was a very interesting woman. She was the first woman to hold elective federal office. She was a congresswoman from Montana. And she's very interesting in the fact that she, as a congresswoman, she was elected to Congress in 1917, served one term until 1919, voted along with 50 other congresspeople against entering World War I. Okay. Leaves office, goes about doing some other things, reelected to Congress in 1941.
Wow, that's a long time.
22 years later, she gets reelected to Congress again from Montana. and is the only congressperson to vote against Roosevelt's declaration of war against Japan on December 8th. They held a vote.
Yeah. After
and she was the only one who voted against that. And she said quite succinctly, as a woman, I cannot go to war, and I refuse to send anybody else. So she was 2 no votes against war. One, she had a little bit of coverage with 50 other congresspeople. World War II, she was the only one. And she got wailed on for it quite vociferously. Yeah. And she held her ground. And she was fine. She was a social worker. She was a lecturer. Again, the first woman to hold federal office. But it was very interesting because, it wasn't her. And she was a pacifist, obviously.
Yeah.
But the thing that made her the most proud was the fact that she preferred to be remembered as the only woman who voted to give women the right to vote, because she was one of the precipitating motivators and person who put up the original legislation for that became the 19th Amendment to get women the right to vote nationally.
Yeah.
And
she was already representing her state.
Correct.
Even though not a single woman ever voted for her.
And it's interesting because
they were allowed to vote in Montana.
Yeah, there were about 5 states at the time that women had the right to vote, and they kept rolling and rolling.
Isn't that what Montana was trying to draw people to them? And some of these states that needed to draw women, which brings them in,
give you some equality,
gave the women the right to vote to bring incentive to live there. So Montana was one of those states.
She was born in 1880, so she was born out in the middle of Billings, Montana, and it might have been Missoula, but. She worked for the family. She raised her siblings. When her father passed away, she raised her siblings. And again, this was not a small family with 11 children, 9 of them who survived out of their formative years. And she had no compunction about when there was a store in the family that needed to be rented. She went out and she built the boardwalk in front of it so that it could be an accessible space. So she was pretty phenomenal. She really was.
When she was first in Congress,
1917,
only woman.
Oh yeah,
in Congress.
Oh yeah. For years. She only served that one term at that point in time, but she was the first woman elected to federal office and the first woman to sit in Congress.
Wow.
And she now is one of the 2 statues representing Montana in Statuary Hall.
Yeah. Who's representing Florida? I think it's Carrier.
Now, and Mary Bethune-Cookman.
Mary Bethune-Cookman.
They took out, what's-his-face, from the house on... Where's the Historical Society's reference library is in the Kirby Smith house. And they took Kirby Smith out because he was a bad guy, Civil War, and a member of the KKK, and among other things. And so they bounced him for Mary Bethune-Cookman.
Yeah. So, Bethune College, Bethune-Cookman College. So, all right, my next person, and then I'm going to end on the woman I think saved more lives than about anybody.
Okay.
My next person is Zora Neale Hurston.
There you go.
So got a little connection here to St. Augustine.
Yeah, absolutely. And a postage stamp. Good for her.
She has a postage stamp.
Yeah, I use it often.
And my connection with her is she was friends with a friend of mine.
Okay.
Stetson,
so it's only 2 degrees of separation.
Stetson Kennedy.
Okay, right.
So she worked with Stetson Kennedy on the Florida Writers program that they had during the WPA, during the New Deal. And these writers, and there were only 2 black writers that were in this group. She was one of them from Eatonville. So Eatonville has a lot of black history.
And Eatonville's not there anymore, is it?
Yeah, Eatonville is still a small community just north of Orlando.
Yeah, okay.
It's still there.
Yeah, because I know it was primarily black community.
Yeah. So, but the biggest writing that she had, the most famous one of her 4 novels was "Their Eyes Were Watching God," which she published in 1937.
Right.
All right. This Florida Writers group got together. No one had work. It was during the Depression, and Roosevelt said, "All right, I need every state to come up with the folklore of their own state, create their own history.
Smart man.
These are some pretty amazing writers that he brought together. Stetson Kennedy being the Florida Writers Hall of Fame. Zora Neale Hurst. I think her house is for sale right now in town.
Is it? Really? Okay.
So
did she end up going to New York and become part of the Harlem Renaissance?
yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
She was one of the central figures of the Harlem Renaissance. But just a phenomenal writer. Did a lot of folklore writing on the black culture in the South. Did a lot of fictional short stories that a lot of people throughout the country probably would recognize some of her stuff. And we have a small little park in St. Augustine where you turn off of US 1.
Is that on King Street?
Go on King Street.
That little corner.
Little pocket park.
Yeah.
And this is the woman that's named after.
Well, it's a nice acknowledgement. And as I said, a U.S. postage stamp. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, I know the Harlem Renaissance was around then, but I would have thought her writing was a little bit later than the 30s. But, Roosevelt was brilliant that way, by putting people to work and putting, artists and sculptors and, what he did with the CCC, the Conservation Corps and built fire trails and fire watches and started expanding the Park Service that way. The three projects in St. Augustine that came out of that, the WPA?
The WPA is our visitor center.
Okay, yeah.
Made in Coquina.
Yeah.
So think of the material. Mm-hmm. Our visitor center, the two hotels that were at the pier. One of them is now the cultural center and the dance company there.
Yeah.
Next to the pier, to the right side, that was a hotel. There was another hotel that looked exactly like it to the north part of the pier.
Right.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
And the band shell and the watchtower in Daytona Beach.
Okay.
All those were built at the exact same time and all a part of the WPA.
And I think it's just brilliant.
Yeah.
In the post office in Long Beach in New York, hi, Long Beach.
Yeah.
There's a magnificent mural of people bathing that was done by a WPA artist, and it's just beautiful. It really is.
All right. All right. Who's your last woman, and then I have one more.
Okay. Edith Bowling Galt Wilson. Woodrow Wilson's second wife.
First president.
First female president. You betcha, baby. That is correct.
First woman president.
Wilson, they got married after he met her for 2 months. His wife had passed away. It hadn't been a year. She was very good friends with Wilson's cousin, who had taken over the First Lady's duties because he was now single and a widower. Mm. And she got off the elevator one day with muddy boots, and he was there and immediately smitten. They palled around for a little while, and, it took a while before she decided that she could love him and said so. But he proposed to her in just a couple of months. And it was 2 months after they met, he proposed, and they got married. And they were happily married. But when he was taken ill on his cross-country tour to buoy up the League of Nations, which was his goal and
that's how he won the Nobel.
Yeah.
They didn't accept it in the U.S., but he won the Nobel Prize for it.
It wasn't a happy time. But there was a 50-year difference in their ages. And in 1919, as he was traveling the country on a train, he felt ill. He suffered a stroke. He came back to D.C., had a bigger stroke, and she just tucked him away.
Yeah.
And kept him secluded from pretty much everybody but the immediate household staff. I don't know that the vice president knew what was going on, in all candor. Mm-hmm. And she claimed that she had the stewardship of the presidency. And she made no bones about saying, I have the stewardship of the presidency. She basically was his gatekeeper, filtered all the information that came to him. She claimed never to alter anything or any of his opinions, but she had been with him so long that she knew his mind. She knew his intentions, or so she claimed. And
here's the irony of it.
Go ahead.
In what year did women get the right to vote?
There you go. 1919.
And Wilson signed that? Or did he?
Well, there was some conjecture that she might have been using his hand. because no one ever saw him. She would go in.
No one ever saw him sign anything.
Correct, because she did it. And but even before that, they were so tight that they would work together at night when the day was over, and she had his codes, and she would translate any of the coded messages that came to him, and she would recode what he was sending out to other people. She did that. She would blot his signature, because that was back in the days where you had that big rolling blotter for the ink pens.
Yeah.
So he would sign, she would blot. So she worked as an administrative assistant, a secretary, a confidant, and when he was incapacitated, she did it. And the interesting thing about this is there was no 25th Amendment at that point in time. So there was no obvious line of succession delineated until 1967. So it was really kind of interesting. One side note, 1904. She was the first woman. She was given an electric in 1904. Take that, Elon Musk.
Yeah.
You Johnny come lately. 1904. She was driving an electric car in Washington D.C. It was the Columbia Elberton Victoria Mark 31.
How long was the extension cord?
I'm still trying to figure that one out myself, or what they used for batteries. But whatever it was an electric car. And then a little bit later, I guess it was Teddy Roosevelt's life. He's signaling words that I can't read with my bad eyes.
He's saying it's halftime.
Okay.
Ad break.
Oh, so that was the bottom word was break.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Break. Yeah,
okay.
You can't read Dr. Blake Levins's writing.
I'm telling you, but, could you just give me a couple of blank prescription pads? We'll go from there.
Yeah.
Oh, and I do have, we can do this off the record or off the show or save for another day, but I have delved a little bit deeper into the 13-sided lightning bolt from the Grateful Dead.
Oh, you did?
I do.
Okay,
yeah.
we're going to do that after the ad break.
Good, you gotcha.
All right, so 1904, you said something about Teddy Roosevelt.
No, it was right. Then I guess it was his wife, might have been Alice or Eleanor, but somebody else was then, his wife was the next one to be driving an electric car. So there's women driving electric cars in Washington in the early 1900s.
That's awesome.
I got a kick out of that.
All right, so my last one is, I believe, the woman that saved more lives than any other woman I can think of. All right? She is the founder of the American Red Cross.
Mm-hmm.
All right? And when you think of saving lives, you think of the person like first responders.
Okay.
All right? But you can save lives in a lot of different ways.
Sure.
All right? So, and I'm talking about Clara Barton. Clara Barton, she created and founded the American Red Cross Society in 1881. She was on a trip in Europe, all right, and the International Red Cross during the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 and 1871, she witnessed what was going on there. She brought it back to the U.S., all right. She oversaw the relief of all the victims during the 1889 Johnstown flood and the Galveston hurricane of 1900.
Serious disasters.
Yeah. So American Red Cross, today, many people recognize it and know the good it does.
Mm-hmm.
It's still around today. It's still there when people get in trouble. It still does exactly what her intent was in 1881.
And then you have the complimentary Red Crescent.
Yep.
Yeah.
So she died in 1912.
Ooh, long time ago.
She was born in 1821. She lived a full life.
Okay, good. A lot of these women have lived into,
91
not Wilmer Mankiller, but a lot of them lived into 90 years old.
All right, and she was born in Oxford, Massachusetts.
As opposed to Mississippi or England. Okay.
In 1821 on Christmas.
Aw, that's nice.
The gift.
That's nice. There you go.
See, that's a great gift on Christmas. They gave us
for the world.
Gave us Clara Barton
for the world.
Saved, and I think of things like human beings like Clara Barton, other people that have saved thousands of people's lives, and a lot of people don't think of it this way, is Bob Dole.
Okay.
And George McGovern.
How and how? I'm intrigued.
Okay. Those two, Republican and Democrat,
right,
came up with the free lunch program.
Okay.
That is still in existence today, and they came up with it in the early 60s. So think of how many thousands of lives that those two have impacted just because they were willing to cross the aisle and put politics aside.
And neither of them got to be president, and both of them probably would have been very good, moderate presidents.
I think they're both good human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, George McGovern's kind of local.
George is a good human being, but I mean,
Bob Dole.
One of the aha moments of my life is I got to introduce George McGovern to Stetson Kennedy. We had breakfast together.
There you go.
They had never met each other, even though they were on the same side of every political
spectrum,
fence that they were in.
Yeah.
But they never got a chance to meet each other. And they were both in their 90s when they met each other.
And George McGovern ended up, lighting in San Francisco, in St. Augustine for a while.
Augustine. That's where George knew I was friends with Stetson. I became George because he's a huge music lover.
Right.
I became friends with him, and I think I have pretty much the only video of those two being in the same room.
See, that's impressive. That's very, very, very cool.
All right, before we do the sponsors, I want to hear about the star. I want to hear about the light.
So there's a man who's been affiliated with the Grateful Dead almost since the inception, whose name was Owsley Stanley. And he was the man who built the Grateful Dead's Wall of Sound.
Okay.
Their stacked speakers that became the greatest PA system in existence at the time. He's also a man who ended up being a chemist who made over 5 million doses of LSD, which the band was participating in. And because he was doing...
I would have never guessed that.
No, not at all. Huh. Oh, I'll get a book for you. It's called the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test.
Never would have guessed that.
Yeah. And he needed a way, when the Dead were playing festivals or playing with other bands, he wanted a way to identify the Grateful Dead's traveling cases, their amp boxes, things of that nature. And he came up with this lightning bolt. And he just designed that 13-pointed lightning bolt. Mm-hmm. Some people think it's for Lucky 13 or Unlucky 13. Some people thought it was for the 13 colonies, as Blake discovered for us. But he just did it as a way to tag their equipment, and it stuck.
Because it's a very unique lightning bolt.
Yes, sir, it is.
I mean, I thought it was purposely done,
right,
but I didn't know why it was purposely done. But it was for their equipment.
Correct, to label their boxes from any other bands. Perfect. And his nickname was Bear. No. So there is all the dancing bears that are now synonymous with the Grateful Dead, Dead and Company, and that entire genre of music. And that's in honor of Owsley.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Great guy.
That's cool. I knew that was real. I thank you for looking that up.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
I never knew that answer. All right, we're going to run through these sponsors really quick. Just want to say a quick thank you because we don't have a whole lot of time. I'm going to mention their names. Coquina Coast Realty. Give them a call if you have any real estate issues you want to talk about selling or buying. River and Fort. Great meal, great bourbon, great location, great view. Check them out. St. Augustine Pirate Museum. It's a must-see in St. Augustine. You got family coming in town, take them to St. Augustine Pirate Museum. Meehan's Irish Pub. Can't say enough about this place. 3 bars in one.
I'm full.
Wonderful people. Check it out over there. There's something for everyone at Meehan's. Abare, Kresge and Associates, just the best accountants in town. If you don't like money, don't call them. If you like money, call them. All right, Chesire Custom and Collisions, wonderful people. They have Cheshire Towing. If you have a little ding in your car, you need it taken care of, give these guys a call, give Chris a call. They're always there for you.
And I learned today that they do towing as opposed to just collision damage and auto repair.
Yeah.
So that's good to know.
Yep. So they do towing. They do towing also. City Gates Distillery and St. Augustine Distillery. We're drinking the bourbon port finish. So smooth, isn't it? Smooth.
It's delicious. I'm telling you, their bourbons, their whiskeys are excellent. Yeah. Excellent whiskeys.
Quality liquor, and it's right here in St. Augustine. Mm-hmm. All right. Court cases or trials. That's our next topic. Mm-hmm. I have 3. You have 2.
I do.
All right. I talked about one of these today because it happened on this day in history.
Which one?
The Zong.
Okay, that's the one I'm not the least bit familiar with.
Zong, the Zong slave ship trial.
Oh, so you're doing back-to-back with the Amistad. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But this one, it took place in 1783 during the Revolutionary War.
Okay.
All right. The Zong slave ship was leaving Africa, going to Jamaica, got lost and misdirected. They were running out of water. So the captives of the slaves threw off 140 slaves or men and women
Well, that's a little rude.
to save on water, and they made it to Jamaica with about 208 slaves. All right. So when I saw this, I was like, okay, they were on trial for murder or on trial for something like that.
Apparently not.
No, they were on trial for insurance fraud.
Okay, back then.
So at that point, it took place in 3 years earlier, and they had claimed on insurance because they did it as a loss of cargo.
So they just died of natural causes?
The high courts in London.
English, okay.
All right. The high courts in London declared that a slave was no different than cattle. All right. What makes this court case so important is all the abolitionists gathered around this case. And this is when abolitionists started. And when England in 1807, they put the first law in on their books about not having slavery. And then in 1833, they didn't allow slavery in any of their colonial empires. All right. So they beat us by almost 60 years on the first law,
right,
and almost 30 years for the empires.
Okay, so now, and I know we're tight on time, but I'm intrigued by a couple things. Was it an English ship? Was it an English insurer?
It was an English insurer. It was.
I mean, was it Lloyd's?
It wasn't. It was not that. Let me find it real quick.
But was it an English ship, or was just an English insurer that they were tried in London?
It was an English ship.
Okay.
And it was an English insurer. It was a company it was the English slave trade.
Okay.
Which I guess was one of the bigger ones. Dutch was up there, and the English were up there, and they were competing for that. But it just caught me so off guard because I never heard of the song until this morning.
Well, that's what I said. That was the one
until this morning. Like even when I talked to you last night, this was not on my list.
Well,
when I read it this morning, it caught me so off guard. I was like, wow, this is a part of our history we should know.
So they claimed that the slaves the captured people that they threw overboard to protect the rest of their cargo, they claimed them as lost
cargo.
And the court made a distinction, making them analogous to cattle.
Yeah, they did.
So my question if you lost cattle, would you not be compensated for your cattle?
Compensated for the cattle.
Okay, so they did get compensated.
They got compensated.
It just made the enslaved individual no more better than literally a beast of burden, which is sadly accurate.
I think it brought out the human side of people and made them think, because it wasn't, basically that's away from here, it's not here.
Right.
But when it brought it back to the courts and it became such a written about in court cases and stuff like that, I think that's what made it such a big deal.
So people took offense to the fact, I'm hoping.
This is the OJ trial of that.
So people took offense to the fact that they were comparing human beings to cattle.
They took offense,
regardless of whether or not they were
took offense
about to be
no one
enslaved.
had any concern for human life.
Right. Okay. All right.
So
that's a step in the right direction. Slowly.
That's what I'm saying. This case was a first huge step for abolitionists.
All right. Good.
All right. What you got?
Well, I'll give you your choice of Scopes or the My Lai trial.
Let's go Scopes.
Okay.
Scopes is like, to me, the Scopes.
It's one of my favorites.
My other one is later in the century, but Scopes in
Scopes trial, 1925.
Yep.
John T. Scopes.
Scopes monkey trial.
Right. Well, that was H.L. Mencken, who wrote for the Baltimore Sun, labeled the monkey trial. Mm-hmm. And it was there was a law called the Butler Law that basically made it illegal to teach any type of process that is counter to creation from the Bible in Tennessee. So people are getting a little, upset in public schools or in public education, paid for by public education. So it's 1925, and a substitute teacher named John Scopes eventually says, all right, fine. And he's still, wasn't ever sure that he taught evolution, but it became a trial balloon, no pun intended, and the whole thing got evolved in a whole lot of other things, because there was a town of Dayton, Tennessee, that was looking for a little notoriety. So they said, well, let's have a trial here. It brought in a tremendous amount of money.
Tennessee, right?
It was the state of Tennessee versus John T. Scopes, and it shook down to the battle lines became basically William Jennings Bryant and Clarence Darrow. Clarence Darrow, ACLU, an agnostic, and
the Scopes. Just to make sure people understand,
it was
about evolution.
Teaching evolution. He was teaching that, right. He and theoretically or realistically, he actually may not have even done that, but he claimed to have done it so that the trial could go forward.
Yeah.
And it was a big trial. It only lasted a bunch of days. It was 10 days.
He was found guilty.
He was found guilty. He was fined $100, which would have been $1,700 in 2022, but in 1925, $100 was pretty significant, and the outcome was overturned on a technicality, because back then the Butler Law was written that the fine for teaching was $100, but the reality of it was there was law in place that a jury had to give any type of fine over $50. A judge couldn't do it. The judge gave the $100 fine, and Scopes was freed on it.
He didn't have to pay. He didn't have to pay the fine.
Right, on the technicality. Right,
he was still guilty. He didn't have to pay the fine,
and he doesn't even know if he taught it. He just agreed to do it so that the case could go forward, and the community of Dayton could get all the economic largesse. His name, and H.L. Mencken, and the Baltimore Sun paid for the most of the defense, because H.L. Mencken, who was one of the most interesting newspaper writers at the time, ran with it. And there was one funny quote, because they had one of his students testify, and he said, well, I don't know if he taught us anything about evolution, but I don't know anything about any monkey business. And that's what the kids said. So there you go. So that was pretty much it. Became the play Inherit the Wind, the movie Inherit the Wind with Spencer Tracy.
Somebody put that in the comments already.
Yep, Spencer Tracy playing Clarence Darrow, Frederick March playing William Jennings Bryant. Brilliant movie. If you haven't seen it and you can find Inherit the Wind, it is just brilliant. And then it's a stage play.
I've seen it, so I might.
You really should. First of all, Spencer Tracy, Frederick March.
Yep.
Brilliant. And
what does Spencer Tracy and Tom Hanks have in common?
I do not know. Or
They're
maybe
the only two men to win Best Actor Oscars back to back. Spencer Tracy did it like 35 and 36.
African Queen.
I don't think it was African Queen.
No,
that was African Queen was.
Humphrey Bogart. I'm sorry, Humphrey Bogart. Oh, Spencer Tracy.
Yeah, and I think that was closer to 40. But Spencer Tracy was like 35 and 36, and
35 and 36. So Pat and Mike kind of thing.
For Tom Hanks, it was Philadelphia and Forrest Gump.
Okay.
And I honestly think he should have won again for Apollo 13 the very next year, but he didn't even get nominated, even though he won the Golden Globe.
There's very little that Tom Hanks has done that hasn't been Oscar worthy. Maybe Joe versus the Volcano, possibly not.
Brain cloud's important.
Well, that's where he met his wife.
If you have a brain cloud, so yeah, I mean, and his work on Bosom Buddies was strong.
Peter Scolari.
Yeah.
Go, baby, go.
Yeah, he's a poor guy. His career never really took off.
No. No.
And Tom Hanks actually beat up the Fonz in Happy Days.
Ooh.
You need to do that clip.
See, I got to go back in there. Yeah.
Google or YouTube Tom Hanks beating up the Fonz in Happy Days.
See, those are all those days I worked.
Yeah. All right.
Go ahead.
You want to do Roe versus Wade, or you want to do Le Amistad?
Well, the Amistad's more interesting. Roe v. Wade is much more controversial now, because the pendulum is starting to swing a little bit back, not with necessarily the Supreme Court as it is today, because they're all going out on junkets with rich donors. But, yeah. All right,
You want to do Amistad? We can do Amistad.
I was gonna say go do Roe.
Roe versus Wade.
let's see you dig out of a hole.
All right, no, it's not digging out of a hole for me, because I mean, like I believe every woman has a right to her own body.
Absolutely.
I think you and I agree with that.
No doubt.
And
healthcare, medical care, contraception, all the above.
Our country is supposed to be based on taking religion out of your decision making in government.
Says it. No state religion.
And I have no problem with some of my very, very best friends are faith-based decision makers. Mm-hmm. And they have the right to their own opinion. But they can't put their opinion on someone else. Okay? And I know I'm offending a lot of people right now, but I'm okay with it. Right. Because I have a right to my opinion.
Correct.
And I believe every human being, and you know, people are like, oh, you're sucking up to women. No. Every human being has a right to decide what happens with their body.
Their bodily autonomy, absolutely. Yeah. You know, and I'm trying to, and my wife will, when she watches the show tomorrow, will hopefully be proud of me when I say I am really, really working on respecting other people's opinions, even though they're divergent of mine. Yep. I'm really working on that, hon. I truly am.
Yeah,
I mean, but it's hard.
Even if I absolutely disagree with everything you're saying,
right?
Hopefully, I still give you that respect to have your really horrible decision making.
Right. I'm trying. This lump of clay is trying to mold himself into something better.
Yeah.
Slowly.
Yeah. And
it ain't easy.
And like I said, I know a lot of people, I see this. It happened in 1973. And it's, to me, one of the biggest, and we talk about trials and court cases and stuff like that. To me, it's the one I couldn't leave off the list.
Right.
Like your Scopes.
Right.
Was the beginning of the century.
Right.
The second half of the century, I think Roe versus Wade. And we're still talking about it today, even though it got overturned in 22.
It was a year ago, almost to the day.
Almost to the day, now. Uh-huh. And that was another reason why I was like, okay, I really want to bring this to people's attention again. Yeah. Because I don't think this discussion's over.
Oh, far from. Because if you look at public opinion, the majority of Americans today believe that there needs to be some right, and again, 6 weeks, 15 weeks, whatever. But there needs to be some availability for abortion, and you're also starting to see the repercussions of the lack of abortions because places that are now supporting women who have children, their demands are going up. Diapers, formula, things of that nature, because there are so many more children that are being born, and that's fine, but now somebody's got to take care of them.
Well, and
a lot of the women who are having these children aren't, unfortunately, in a position to do that themselves.
Yeah, and the people that are against even incest and rape,
wow,
that part befuddles me.
Right.
I can't get my head around that, and that part befuddles me at a level, like you said. Everyone has the right to their own opinion, but I haven't heard a good argument where that's okay.
And
I don't think I ever will, because I know where I'm at with my own mindset. But to me, this case is one of the biggest cases that we'll see in the next 100 years.
And I was listening to something on the radio just yesterday where they were talking about the courts respecting precedent. And, that's fine because the courts respect precedent. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what the court didn't respect in the Dobbs case was, what was it, 50 years of precedent?
Yeah.
And they said no.
Yeah. But they were politically placed in that role.
Yes. To do just that.
And they didn't separate. And there's so many. And,
church and state?
And there's some great cases going back to Thomas Jefferson, of when they really set judicial and political away from each other. And somehow that's been lost, in my opinion.
Right.
And we need to figure out how to get that right.
So is the separation of church and state, in all candor.
Yeah. And like I said, my very best friends are faith-based decision makers, and I respect their decision. but I don't want them to put their decision on somebody else.
Right.
All right, guess what? That's the end of our show.
Man, we need to do 90 minutes.
I know.
Or one topic, because
what was your other case you had?
my other case was the My Lai massacre trial.
The My Lai massacre trial.
Vietnam. Yep.
Yeah, and my
Lieutenant William Calley.
Yeah.
It was war crimes committed by Americans in Vietnam.
Yep.
And his Nuremberg argument of "I was just following orders" didn't quite fly.
Yep. And my other one was like Augustine.
Right.
That trial that was defended by former President John Quincy Adams.
Right.
So,
and you can see the movie, ladies and gentlemen. It's a very good movie.
It's a great movie. And they stuck pretty close to the book in that movie. Yeah. So, all right. Thanks, Lenny.
You know how I really enjoy this
show.
You know how I enjoy this.
Blake, how'd we do?
Yay.
We got a thumbs up from Blake. All right, guess what, guys? That's the end of our show. If you enjoyed this show, please hit that share button. Support our sponsors. And if you didn't enjoy the show, still hit that share button because, your friends have better taste than you. But this is Bollox, Talks, and Tangents, and we'll be back next week at 6:34. Bye-bye.